Good morning, and we are in Doctrine and Covenants 78 now. And this is almost like a business meeting in this one. Well, a little bit. It's covering the affairs of the temporal affairs. What is the United Firm? The United Firm was established to manage the church's publishing and business affairs in Ohio and Missouri. It consisted of Joseph Smith, Newell K. Whitney, and other church leaders who combined their resources to meet temporal needs of the growing, tired today, of the growing church. Unfortunately, the United Firm fell into debt and was dissolved in 1834 when debts became unmanageable. Now, there's two things that could be read here. The Newell K. Whitney and the United Firm, I read through and got a lot of information out of it, but it is long, and I think just the United Firm, which just talks about the United Firm itself, we'll read some of it. So, United Firm was an administrative organization that oversaw the expenditure of the church funds between 1832 and 1834. In March 1832, the Lord commanded Joseph Smith to establish this organization in order to coordinate the literary and mercantile establishments of the church in both Ohio and Missouri. Joseph convened a council of high priests in April 1832 in Missouri for this purpose. At the council, Joseph received another revelation indicating that he and Sidney Rigdon, Newell K. Whitney, and Edward Partridge, Sidney Gilbert, John Whitmer, Oliver Cowdery, William W. Phelps, and Martin Harris would be part of this organization. The revelation further explained that these men could use a portion of the collected funds for their own necessities and any remaining funds to be used for church purposes. They were responsible for the firm's debts. So these 9 men that we just talked about, 6 were stewards over the revelation. So they were publishing, known as the literary firm, and oversaw the church's publishing. And then we had Edward Partridge and Whitney, who were the bishops. And then Gilbert was an agent to Partridge. Together, these 3 managed the church's storehouses in Ohio and Missouri. And because they did this, I think that is why often it talks about how to look after the poor, and this is because a lot of what they did was looking after the poor as well, as bishops. Additional members, said Frederick G. Williams and John Johnson, were added to the firm by revelation. Williams, a member of the church's governing presidency, had large holdings in Ohio, as did Johnson. Their holdings became resources of the United Firm. So we're getting an idea of what this was about. For 2 years, much of the church's business was done through the United firm, including the purchase of the property on which the house of the Lord in Kirtland would be constructed. When the Saints were driven from Jackson County, Missouri in fall of 1833, the church lost two vital components of the firm, Phelps's printing office and Gilbert's storehouse. In addition, the united firm had debts from purchases of goods for the storehouses, a new printing press in Kirtland, and land for Kirtland's development. On April 10th, 1834, members of the united firm in Kirtland decided to dissolve the organization, and a few weeks later, the united firm ceased to function. The Kirtland High Council, formed in 1834, assumed the role of governing the church's mercantile and publishing efforts. In some editions, in the Doctrine and Covenants, the united firm was called the United Order, and code names were inserted. I remember reading one of the reading from the earlier Doctrine and Covenants with the code names all inserted in there. Personally, I was really glad when they got rid of those code names. It's good history, but it's just easier to read nowadays, and we understand the reason for the code names in the past. In addition, language about the firm's purpose was changed so that it referred more generically to caring for the poor. This was done to protect the identity of the firm's members and to keep its purposes confidential. The names of the individuals were restored to the Doctrine and Covenants in 1980s, but the word order is still used instead of firm in sections 78, 82, 92, 96, and 104. This has led some to confuse the firm with the United Order, a system for living the law of consecration established later by Brigham Young in Utah. And I think that's significant too, because there was a lot of confusion, because when I remember growing up, and I thought that that's what all this was about, and I'm pretty sure I was taught a few times that, hey, this is that United Order law of consecration thing that was established. And so I'm really grateful for the papers that they give on this and the information nowadays. So that is the United Order. It's just a way of how the church was functioning at the time, temporarily. And do they do it today? Yeah, they don't do that. They had the Kirtland Safety Society when it was needed. The church now has different businesses and temporal things when they need them, and when they don't need them, they do usually sell them off and stop using them. I myself, I remember being in Utah. One of the things that was a church-owned orchard my brother got to help. Him and his wife would help manage part of that each year. And then each year for about 3 weeks, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, when the cherries were all ripe. They had more than just cherries, but the cherries was the big thing. They would hire a whole bunch of people to come out and work 12-hour shifts to help prepare the cherries for market, separate them and everything. This is quite laborious, but I was a student then and would go out there in the summer and be able to work out there. I did that 1 year. My wife did it 1 year as well. It was a good experience. And there was other things that another thing that I was involved was Bonneville Communications for when I was a teenager, and the church was making a film, and we got to go to Bonneville was it called Bonneville Production Studios? I think it was something else, but it was part of Bonneville Communications, and help make a film in the church. Is kind of a good experience for that as well. Being into acting at the time, I really enjoyed that experience with some of my friends. And so it was fun to see some of the things that was there in that the church owned, and that there is things that are temporarily used. Bonneville Communications still runs a lot of the things. They help run, unless they've changed their name, I can't remember, but they help with the distribution of general conferences every 6 months. And so it has become a very important part of the church efforts, plus all of the church videos and things that need to be made. All this has to go has to come from somewhere, and somebody needs to do it. And so these are the things that you'd call church businesses and things like that. Just was part of my personal things, and I think that's great. And back then, the United Order was there to help establish these printing and the stores and the purchase of lands and all the things that need to be done if you're going to do anything with the church. These things have to be done. I mean, as it said there, one of the things that was purchased through this was the Kirtland temple site, and this is the way that it helped make sure that it came about. Unfortunately, I think with the destruction of the printing press and the store, That's a lot of money in Missouri. And so it couldn't keep going that way. Okay, let's get into the Revelation anyway. I hope you didn't mind me rambling on a little bit there. But I just wanted to give a little bit of personal experiences there. So, Revelation given through Joseph Smith, the prophet, at Kirtland, Ohio, March 1st, 1832. On that day, the prophet and other leaders had assembled to discuss church business. This revelation originally instructed Joseph Sidney Rigdon, Newell K. Whitney to travel to Missouri and organize the church's mercantile and publishing endeavors by creating a firm that would oversee these efforts in generating funds for the establishment of Zion and for the benefit of the poor. This firm, known as the United Firm, was organized in April 1832 and disbanded in 1834. Sometime after this dissolution, under the direction of Joseph Smith, the phrase, "the affairs of the storehouse for the poor," replaced mercantile and publishing and establishments in the Revelation, and the word order replaced firm. And we understand when people were taking cheap shots at the church, I guess. That's the only way I could describe it. They didn't want to make it easy for them. The Lord spake unto Joseph Smith, Jr., saying, Hearken unto me, saith the Lord your God, who are ordained unto the high priesthood of my church, who have established yourselves together, and listen to the counsel of him who has ordained you from on high, who shall speak in your ears words of wisdom, that salvation may be unto you in that thing which you have presented before me, saith the Lord your God, the Lord God. For verily I say unto you, the time is come, and now is at hand, and behold, and lo, it must needs be that there be an organization of my people in regulating and establishing the affairs of the storehouse for the poor of my people, both in this place and in the land of Zion, for a permanent and everlasting establishment and order unto my church, to advance the cause which ye have espoused, to the salvation of man, and to the glory of your Father who is in heaven, that you may be equal in the bonds of heavenly things and earthly things also, for the obtaining of heavenly things. So it puts that little caveat that it's for the obtaining of heavenly things that we have these earthly things. For if ye are not equal in earthly things, ye cannot be equal in obtaining heavenly things. For if you will that I give unto you a place in the celestial world, ye must prepare yourselves by doing the things which I have commanded you and required of you. Now verily, thus saith the Lord, it is expedient that all things be done unto my glory, but you who are joined together in this order. I think that's significant. All things to be done in my glory. I'm just going to mark that. The reason why is because I think that's an important part of it, that it's supposed to be done for the Lord's sake. And if you don't do it for the Lord's sake, it's not going to work out. And I think it's something that we can do in our own lives. We can do our businesses and all this, but we consecrate our time, our talents, and everything to the Lord. And if it's done for His glory, then He is there for us. And, I think that is the way that we should work anyway in our jobs, even though it may seem mundane, that we work with a stewardship in a way of the things that we have. Or in other words, let my servant Neil K. Whitney and my servant Joseph Smith Jr. and my servant Sidney Rigdon sit and counsel with the saints which are in Zion. Nevertheless, Satan seeketh to turn their hearts away from the truth, and they become blinded and understand not the things which are prepared for them. Wherefore a commandment I give unto you, to prepare and organize yourselves by a bond of or everlasting covenant that cannot be broken. So this is quite a strong thing. So they're supposed to organized by a bond or an everlasting covenant. They need to take it seriously. They need to see the funds. I remember working in the bishopric, and the one thing that kept coming up was, these are sacred funds that are given. The tithing and the fast offerings, they're sacred, and we have a stewardship to take care of those in a sacred way. And we're constantly reminded of that, because it was very important to know that it is a covenant that we have. And back then, it was for them as well, both temporally and spiritually. I hope as you go throughout your day to day that you see the spiritual things and the temporal things that you do. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.